Joining us now, along with John Bogman and Madeline Kahn to talk about this, the Executive Director of Cause for Action, Dan Epstein. Dan, we thank you for your time and we welcome you to America's Forum.
Thanks so much for having me.
Now, Dan, the House plans this vote. Do you think this is the right thing at the right time, or in terms of perception, would this send the wrong political note, allowing Democrats to latch on to the war on women phrase?
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately, you know, and Steve Stockman is one of the members of Congress who has very aggressively tried to put this up to a vote. I mean, the House is entirely authorized to put Lois Lerner in the Capitol jail. She, in their view, violated the law, and in addition to that, in their view, is also in contempt of Congress. So the question is not whether they have the authority to do that. They clearly have the authority to do that. I think it becomes a question of what is the message that's sent. One message is very clearly that we do not endorse or authorize the kind of activity that Lois Lerner did here. We don't like, whether you're Republican, Democrat, conservative, liberal, if you are engaging in expressive association and you are essentially audited by the feds for doing that, we don't approve of that. So I think that's one clear message. I think the other messages are just whether this is just going to engage Democrats in saying that the congressional investigation into the IRS is entirely politicized. I hope one thing that we all learn is the report that came out today by the House Oversight Committee on what reforms need to happen at the IRS are fairly non-objectionable. They're very clear, very hard to disagree with, and it's obvious that there needs to be real reform.
Dan, I want to take a moment now and go to your Washington Times article where you said all IRS roads lead to the archivist. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Yeah, you know, the National Archives, I think a lot of folks who might be watching this program think that the archives is the place where we have our Declaration of Independence, our Constitution, and historical documents of this country. But the reality is that most of what the archives does is it's the records repository for the whole federal government. So every executive branch agency, from the IRS to the EPA to any other agency that we know is all of a sudden losing emails, has to store its records and update its records retention policies with the National Archives. My organization, Cause of Action, we're a government accountability group. We know a little bit about the archives and their lack of transparency because we've sued them and we've litigated them all the way up into the D.C. Circuit. And I think an important point here is, okay, well, we've heard claims that the IRS lost its emails. Now the question is whether these hard drives were just simply scratched and are therefore recoverable. We've also heard that the EPA has lost emails. And I think that what is clear is that everyone has gotten, members of Congress have gotten the archivist to say, yeah, the IRS didn't follow policy. But the question is what has the archivist done to ensure that records are being properly stored? And I think what the ultimate question is what does the archivist know?
Can you
about
explain
what
that, though? Let's backtrack. Can you explain what you mean when you say that they might have violated their own regulations for our audience?
There's a Congress passed. It's called the Federal Records Act.
Right.
And it very clearly says agencies, when you're funded on the taxpayer dime, you need to preserve all of your records. Now, the Archives is the agency that Congress authorized with interpreting that act. And so the Archives has to tell agencies, here's how you need to preserve records, here's the materials that you need to store, here are the materials that you don't need to store. And what's clear is we know that the IRS did not follow those policies. But I think the greater question is was it because the IRS intentionally violated those policies, or was the archives complicit in these agency records retention failures? And I think one thing that we've already seen is that, at least with the White House, which has its own records retention policy, the White House has claimed we have no emails with Lois Lerner during that time period. Well, the question is did the White House give records to the archives and say they're no longer at the White House? Does the archivist know about that? And I think the other thing is we have a memo that hasn't been much discussed where the White House actually instructed all of the federal agencies to destroy records that were not electronic, and to do that by 2016. Well, does that violate what Congress passed as a law to say preserve records if the White House is instructing agencies to do that? And again, a question that the archivist needs to answer.
And again, you're saying the focus needs to be on the archivist, David Ferraro, correct?
That's right. Yeah, Ferraro is the archivist. He's an Obama appointee. Because ultimately, this isn't just a problem we've seen with the IRS. We've also heard claims from the EPA, we've lost emails as well. We have a lot of folks who are saying that agencies are now text messaging each other. Do those text messages need to be preserved as they deal with official agency business? But all of these questions, all of these loopholes that seem to be exposed at this point, that's really a question for the archivist. So we might be very satisfied that the archivist said in congressional testimony the IRS did not follow the law. But the real question is the archivist is charged with enforcing that law. And if the archivist didn't do a good job, we need to know that.
Dan Epstein, you have pointed out again that it's not only bringing the relevant officials in front of committees, it's asking the right questions. And we appreciate your perspective on what's going on not only with Lois Lerner, but with the archivist of the United States. And it's knowing how to ask those questions. Reminds me of George Stephanopoulos. So he's brought before committees. Did you keep a diary? No, I did not. Technically, that was true. He would go home, call up a friend who would take down his notes in a diary that he used for his book. So that's the way he dodged the question, do you keep a diary?
Plausible deniability, right?
That's part of it. There's no denying there is more to come here on Newsmax TV. Some more healthy differences of opinion and your opinions. We'd love to have them. Why don't you tweet them to us at Newsmax TV, #America's4.